The rushing water of the Cimarron River swallowed Olivia Gallagher's screams as her knees buckled beneath her. The journey west had taken everything: her husband to cholera, her supplies to thieves, and now her strength as she clutched her 3-year-old son to her chest while the current pulled at her skirts. Her vision tunneled to darkness as the last of her energy drained away, the weight of her child slipping from her grasp. "I've got both, keep your head high." The deep voice cut through her fading consciousness as strong arms encircled her waist, lifting both her and her son from the merciless water. Wyoming Territory, 1876. Olivia had been just another desperate widow seeking a new beginning when the river nearly claimed what little she had left. The man who carried her to shore moved with the confident stride of someone who'd spent his life in the saddle. Water streamed from his drenched clothing as he carefully laid Olivia on the riverbank, her son still clutched to her chest. The boy coughed and sputtered, but was blessedly alive. "Madam, can you hear me?" The stranger's voice was gentle as he brushed wet hair from her face. His eyes were the color of summer sky, a stark contrast to his sun-darkened skin. Olivia's eyelids fluttered as consciousness slowly returned. She gasped and immediately reached for her son. "Tommy." "Where's Tommy?" "Right here, madam. Boy's just fine." The cowboy shifted so she could see her son, who was now sitting up beside her, looking shaken but unharmed. Relief flooded through her as she pulled Tommy close, her hands trembling as she checked him for injuries. "Thank God," she whispered. "Thank God." "Name's Ryan Calloway," the cowboy said, settling back on his haunches. His hat was missing, likely lost to the river, and his dark hair fell in wet curls around his face. "Got a camp set up just over that ridge. You both look like you could use some dry clothes and a hot meal." Olivia hesitated, years of hard-learned caution warring with desperation. She had nowhere else to go, and Tommy needed warmth and food. "Olivia Gallagher," she finally replied. "And this is my son, Thomas." Ryan nodded, respect in his eyes. "Pleasure to meet you both, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Can you stand, Mrs. Gallagher?" "I believe so." But when Olivia attempted to rise, her legs trembled beneath her, refusing to bear her weight. Without comment, Ryan scooped her into his arms, motioning for Tommy to follow. "It's not far. My partner Jackson's there with the horses. We're moving cattle to Fort Laramie." The campsite was modest but well-organized: 2 bedrolls, a small fire, and 2 horses grazing nearby. A grizzled older man looked up from where he was tending the fire, surprise evident on his weathered face. "Found some folks having trouble in the river," Ryan explained, gently setting Olivia down on a bedroll. "This is Mrs. Gallagher and her boy Tommy." Jackson nodded, his expression softening as he looked at Tommy. "Got some hot coffee here and stew bubbling. You both must be freezing." Ryan rummaged through his saddlebags, producing a worn but clean shirt. "It's not much, madam, but it's dry. You can change behind that stand of trees." "I'll find something for the boy." Olivia accepted the shirt with shaking hands. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Calloway. We would have." She glanced at Tommy and left the sentence unfinished. Ryan waved away her thanks. Anyone would have done the same, but Olivia knew better. The trail west was littered with the graves of those whom anyone had passed by without helping. Good Samaritans like Ryan Calloway were rare treasures in this harsh landscape. While Olivia changed into Ryan's shirt, which hung to her knees, Ryan wrapped Tommy in a blanket and gave him a tin cup of warm broth. By the time she returned to the fire, her son was already looking better, color returning to his pale cheeks. "If you don't mind my asking, Mrs. Gallagher, what brings you out here alone?" Jackson asked, handing her a steaming cup of coffee. Olivia wrapped her fingers around the warm tin. "We were headed for Whisper Creek. My cousin has a millinery shop there, said I could help with the sewing." She swallowed hard. "My husband died 3 months ago. Cholera. We were halfway through Kansas when it took him." Ryan's expression darkened. "I'm sorry for your loss, madam." "Thank you." Olivia sipped the coffee, the bitter liquid warming her from the inside. "The wagon train continued on, but last week while we were camped, someone stole our oxen and most of our supplies. The wagon master said they couldn't delay for one family, so—" She shrugged, the pain of abandonment still fresh. "You've been walking since then?" Ryan asked, incredulous. Olivia nodded. "We still had some food. I thought we could make it to the next settlement, but I misjudged the crossing." Shame burned her cheeks. I nearly killed us both with my foolishness. That river's treacherous even for experienced folks, Jackson said kindly. No shame in being caught by it. Ryan studied her for a moment. Whisper Creek, you said, that's where we're headed after we deliver this herd. We can escort you there. Hope bloomed in Olivia's chest. I couldn't ask that of you. You didn't ask, I offered. Ryan's smile was warm, genuine. We'll be at Fort Laramie in 3 days. After that, it's just another week to Whisper Creek. Jackson nodded. Girl and her boy can't be wandering alone out here. Too many dangers. I have no way to repay you, Olivia admitted. Ryan shook his head. Not looking for payment, Mrs. Gallagher. Just doing what's right. That night, Olivia slept better than she had in months. Tommy curled against her side, both of them wrapped in Ryan's bedroll while he slept under the stars. She watched him for a long time before sleep claimed her, this cowboy who'd risked his life for 2 strangers. In the flickering firelight, she could see the strong line of his jaw, the gentle way he breathed in sleep. Something unfamiliar stirred within her, something she'd thought had died alongside her husband. Morning brought clear skies and the earthy smell of coffee. Olivia woke to find Tommy already up, sitting beside Ryan as the cowboy showed him how to whittle a small wooden horse. Mama, Tommy exclaimed when he saw her stirring. Look what Mr. Ryan is making me. Ryan glanced up, a hint of color touching his cheeks. Hope that's all right, madam. Boy was up early and I thought he might like something to play with. It's wonderful, Olivia said softly, touched by the man's kindness toward her son. Thank you. Jackson approached from where he'd been tending the horses. We should head out soon, got a lot of ground to cover today. Ryan nodded, pocketing his knife. Mrs. Gallagher, you and Tommy can ride my horse. I'll walk alongside. I couldn't take your horse, Olivia protested. You can and you will, Ryan said firmly. You're still recovering from yesterday. Besides, it'll be faster this way. There was no arguing with his logic, so Olivia found herself perched atop Ryan's sturdy bay mare, Tommy secured in front of her as they set out. The cattle moved at a steady pace, guided by Ryan and Jackson with practiced ease. Throughout the day, Ryan walked beside them, occasionally reaching up to steady Tommy when the boy grew restless. He pointed out landmarks, told stories of his travels, and made sure they stopped frequently for rest. By the time they made camp that evening, Olivia found herself watching for his smile, listening for his laugh. You've been very kind, she said as they sat by the fire after Tommy had fallen asleep. Not everyone would take in strangers the way you have. Ryan looked into the flames. My ma died on the trail when I was 14. No one stopped to help us. Pa and I barely made it to the next settlement. His voice grew quiet. Promised myself I'd never turn away from someone in need. Olivia's heart ached for the boy he'd been. Your mother would be proud of the man you've become. He glanced up, surprise in his eyes. Thank you for saying that. It's the truth. She hesitated. May I ask, is there someone waiting for you back home? A shadow crossed his face. No, madam. Never settled long enough to find that kind of happiness. The admission hung between them, ripe with possibilities neither dared to voice. The following days fell into a comfortable rhythm. During the day, they drove the cattle northward, Olivia now riding Jackson's horse while the older man rode double with Ryan. In the evenings, they would make camp, share stories around the fire, and take turns entertaining Tommy. The boy had grown attached to Ryan, following him around camp, asking endless questions that the cowboy patiently answered. On the 3rd night, as they camped within sight of Fort Laramie's walls, Tommy asked Ryan to tell him a bedtime story. I'm not much for stories, partner, Ryan said, ruffling the boy's hair. Please? Tommy's eyes were wide and hopeful. Mama says stories keep the bad dreams away. Ryan glanced at Olivia, who nodded encouragingly. Go ahead, you can't be worse at it than I am. With a chuckle, Ryan settled beside Tommy's bedroll. All right then. Once upon a time, there was a brave young cowboy named Tommy. The simple tale of adventure and bravery had Tommy hanging on every word, his eyelids growing heavier as Ryan's deep voice continued. By the end, the boy was fast asleep, a small smile on his face. Ryan stood brushing dust from his jeans. Never done that before, he admitted quietly. You're a natural, Olivia said, and meant it. The sight of this strong, capable man being so gentle with her son stirred something deep within her, something both frightening and exhilarating. The next morning brought them to Fort Laramie, a bustling military outpost surrounded by a small settlement. After delivering the cattle and collecting their payment, Ryan and Jackson secured rooms at the local boarding house for all of them. First real bed in weeks, Jackson sighed happily as they ate dinner in the boarding house dining room. Thought my old bones had forgotten what one felt like. Tommy was already nodding off over his plate, the excitement of the day catching up to him. Olivia excused herself to put him to bed, but when she returned, she found only Ryan waiting at the table. Jackson turned in early, he explained, said his back was bothering him again. Olivia slid into her chair, suddenly nervous to be alone with Ryan. In the soft lamplight, his features seemed softer, his eyes more intense as they studied her. "Tomorrow we'll get you and Tommy some proper clothes," he said. "Can't have you arriving in Whisper Creek wearing my old shirt." "You've already done so much," Olivia protested. Ryan leaned forward. Olivia, it was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips made her breath catch. "I want to help. Please let me." She met his gaze, finding nothing but sincerity there. "All right," she agreed softly. They spent the next day in the settlement, where Ryan purchased fabric, a ready-made dress for immediate use, sturdy shoes for both Olivia and Tommy, and various necessities for the journey ahead. When Olivia tried to object to the expense, he simply shook his head. "Consider it an investment in your future millinery business," he said with a wink. "You can make me a hat when you're settled." The new dress, a practical blue calico with white piping, fit well enough, though the seamstress promised to have it properly altered by morning. For the first time since leaving Kansas, Olivia felt like herself again as she gazed at her reflection. "You look beautiful," Ryan said quietly, standing in the doorway of the seamstress's shop. Olivia blushed, smoothing the fabric with suddenly nervous hands. "Thank you. It feels good to be properly dressed again." That evening, after Tommy was asleep, Olivia found Ryan sitting alone on the boarding house porch, smoking a cigarette and staring at the stars. "May I join you?" she asked. He immediately stood, offering her his chair. "Of course." "You can sit too," she said with a small smile. "I don't need the whole porch to myself." Ryan settled back down, a respectful distance between them. For a while, they simply sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the fort gradually quieting as night deepened. "What will you do after you deliver us to Whisper Creek?" Olivia finally asked. Ryan exhaled a stream of smoke. "Not sure. There's usually work for a cowhand somewhere." "You don't have a home to return to," he shook his head. "Been drifting since I was 16. Pa died, left me the horse and his gun, and I've been moving ever since." "Doesn't that get lonely?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Ryan's eyes met hers, something vulnerable flickering in their depths. "Yes," he admitted, "it does." Olivia thought of her own future working in her cousin's shop, raising Tommy alone, perhaps never finding love again. The prospect stretched before her, bleak and solitary. "I'm afraid too," she whispered, "of being alone." Ryan's hand moved across the space between them, his calloused fingers gently covering hers. "You're not alone anymore, Olivia." The simple touch sent warmth coursing through her. For the first time since Henry's death, Olivia felt a glimmer of hope for something beyond mere survival. They sat like that, hands barely touching, until the night air grew too cold and they reluctantly parted to their separate rooms. They left Fort Laramie the next morning, now a party of 4 on horseback. Ryan had purchased a gentle mare for Olivia and Tommy, loaded with their new supplies. The journey to Whisper Creek would take them through rolling hills and valleys, following the North Platte River for much of the way. As they rode, Olivia found herself drawing closer to Ryan, their conversations flowing easily from practical matters to deeper thoughts. He spoke of his dreams to someday own land, to build something lasting. She shared her hopes for Tommy's future, her determination to give him opportunities she'd never had. Jackson watched their growing attachment with knowing eyes but kept his observations to himself. Tommy, however, had no such reservations. "Are you going to be my new pa?" he asked Ryan one evening as they made camp, the question hanging in the air like thunder before a storm. Ryan froze, his eyes darting to Olivia, who stood paralyzed by the fire. "Tommy, that's not an appropriate question," she managed to say, her cheeks burning. "But he takes care of us like Pa did," Tommy persisted, oblivious to the adult's discomfort. "And he makes you smile again." Jackson coughed and suddenly found urgent business with the horses. Ryan knelt beside Tommy, his expression serious. Your pa was a good man, Tommy. No one can replace him, but I promise I'll always be your friend no matter what happens. The answer seemed to satisfy the boy, who nodded solemnly before running off to help Jackson. When Ryan stood and finally met Olivia's gaze, the emotion in his eyes took her breath away. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Children don't understand. Don't apologize, Ryan interrupted. He's just saying what he sees. He hesitated. Olivia, I know it's too soon, and I have no right to ask anything of you, but when we reach Whisper Creek. Yes, her heart hammered in her chest. Would you allow me to call on you, properly I mean? His normally confident demeanor had vanished, replaced by a vulnerability that touched her deeply. Relief and joy flooded through her. I would like that very much. His answering smile was like sunrise breaking over the plains. The remainder of their journey passed too quickly for Olivia's liking. Each day brought them closer to Whisper Creek and the uncertain future that awaited them there. Would her cousin welcome them? Would Ryan truly stay, or would the call of the open range prove too strong? On their 6th day from Fort Laramie, disaster struck without warning. They had stopped to water the horses when Jackson spotted the dust cloud on the horizon. Riders coming fast, he said, his hand moving to his pistol. Too many to be friendly, Ryan's expression hardened. Mrs. Gallagher, take Tommy and hide in those trees. Don't come out until I call for you. Olivia grabbed Tommy, her heart racing as she rushed for the shelter of the pines. From their hiding place, she watched as 6 riders approached the camp, their intentions clear in the weapons they brandished. Well, what have we here? The lead rider drawled, a tall man with a scar cutting across his face. 2 cowboys with mighty fine horses. Just passing through, Ryan said calmly, though Olivia could see the tension in his shoulders. We don't want trouble. The scarred man laughed. Trouble found you anyway. Those horses, your guns, and whatever money you're carrying ought to ease our burden. We've got nothing worth dying over, Jackson said, his voice steady despite his age. That's where you're wrong, old man. The leader nodded to his companions, who spread out around Ryan and Jackson. Everyone's got something worth taking. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. Jackson made a move for his gun, and shots exploded through the clearing. Olivia clamped her hand over Tommy's mouth to stifle his cry as Jackson fell, blood blooming on his shirt. Ryan dove for cover, returning fire with deadly accuracy. 2 of the bandits dropped from their saddles, but the others kept coming. The gun battle seemed to last forever, though it couldn't have been more than minutes. When it was over, 4 bandits lay dead, 1 had fled, and the leader was on his knees, Ryan's gun pressed to his head. You killed my friend, Ryan said, his voice cold with fury. Give me one reason why I shouldn't return the favor. The bandit's face was pale with fear. I got a family, please. Olivia emerged from the trees, keeping Tommy behind her. Ryan, she called softly. Don't. Ryan's hand trembled on the gun. For a terrible moment, Olivia thought he would pull the trigger anyway. Then, with a violent motion, he struck the man with the butt of his pistol, knocking him unconscious. Check his pockets for anything useful, Ryan instructed Olivia as he moved to Jackson's side. We need to move quickly. His friend might bring more trouble. Jackson was still alive, barely. The bullet had struck his shoulder, missing his heart but causing severe bleeding. Ryan worked quickly to bandage the wound, his face grim. Will he live? Olivia asked, keeping Tommy occupied with gathering their scattered supplies, if we get him to a doctor soon. Ryan carefully lifted the older man onto his horse. Whisper Creek's still a day's ride. There's a homestead I know of about 3 hours from here. They might be able to help. They rode hard. Jackson slumped against Ryan on his horse, Olivia following with Tommy. The sun was beginning to set when they crested a hill and saw the homestead nestled in a small valley below a sturdy cabin with smoke rising from the chimney, a barn and fields of wheat rippling in the evening breeze. As they approached, a man emerged from the barn, rifle in hand. That's far enough, he called. State your business. We need help, Ryan replied, raising one hand while supporting Jackson with the other. My friend's been shot. We were attacked by bandits. The man hesitated, then lowered his rifle. Bring him in. As they drew closer, he squinted at Ryan. Calloway, that you? Ryan's face showed recognition and relief. Will Turner, didn't know this was your place. Going on 3 years now. Will motioned toward the cabin. Sarah, get water boiling and the medical kit. A woman appeared in the doorway, her expression changing from wariness to concern as she saw their condition. Bring him inside quickly, she directed, already rolling up her sleeves. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Sarah Turner, it transpired, had been a nurse during the war and knew more about bullet wounds than most doctors. She extracted the bullet from Jackson's shoulder, cleaned and stitched the wound, and administered laudanum for the pain while Will and Ryan saw to the horses and explained the situation. Olivia kept Tommy occupied, grateful for the Turners' kindness and trying not to dwell on how close they'd come to tragedy. When Sarah finally emerged from the bedroom where they'd placed Jackson, her apron stained with blood but her expression hopeful, everyone breathed easier. He'll live, she announced. The bullet didn't hit anything vital, but he's lost a lot of blood. He needs rest at least a week, probably more. Ryan nodded, relief evident on his face. Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what we would have done. She waved away his thanks. Will says you saved his brother during that cattle drive to Abilene. Consider this partial repayment. She turned to Olivia and Tommy. You two must be exhausted. There's stew on the stove and I can make up beds for you. That night, after Tommy was asleep in a trundle bed in the corner of the Turners' main room, Olivia found Ryan sitting on the porch steps, staring out into the darkness. You should be resting, he said without turning as she sat beside him. I could say the same to you. She pulled her shawl tighter against the evening chill. How is Jackson? Sleeping. Sarah says the fever's the biggest concern now. Ryan's hands were clasped tightly in front of him. I should have seen those riders sooner, should have been more careful. This isn't your fault, Olivia said firmly. You saved our lives today, all of our lives. He looked at her then, his eyes haunted. I almost killed that man, in cold blood after he was no longer a threat. What kind of monster does that make me? It makes you human, Olivia replied, covering his clenched hands with her own. You were protecting us, but you stopped yourself, Ryan. That's what matters. His fingers slowly uncurled beneath hers until they were properly holding hands, his thumb gently stroking her palm. When I saw Jackson fall, all I could think was that it could have been you or Tommy. I couldn't bear it if anything happened to either of you. The raw emotion in his voice made her breath catch. Nothing happened. We're safe thanks to you. Ryan's free hand reached up to touch her face, his calloused fingers impossibly gentle against her cheek. Olivia, I know we've only known each other a short while, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. I think I'm falling in love with you. The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Olivia should have been frightened by its swiftness, should have pulled away and reminded him of propriety. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, the words both terrifying and liberating, and it scares me to death. Why? He asked, his face inches from hers now. Because I've already lost one husband. I'm not sure I could survive losing another. The admission cost her, bringing back memories of Henry's slow, painful death and the crushing loneliness that followed. Ryan's eyes were steady on hers. I can't promise forever, Olivia. No one can, but I can promise to cherish every day we might have together. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home after a long journey. His lips were soft against hers, the kiss gentle and questioning at first, then deepening as she responded. Olivia's heart raced as she wound her arms around his neck, feeling the solid strength of him, the safety he represented. They broke apart at the sound of the door opening, Will Turner clearing his throat awkwardly. Sorry to interrupt, but Jackson's awake and asking for you, Ryan. Reluctantly, Ryan stood, his hand lingering on Olivia's. We'll talk more tomorrow, he promised before following Will inside. The week that followed was one of healing and decisions. Jackson recovered slowly but steadily under Sarah's care. Tommy flourished in the homestead environment, following Will around as he tended the farm and livestock. And Olivia and Ryan found precious moments together, learning each other's stories, sharing dreams, and planning for a future neither had imagined possible just weeks before. I have some savings, Ryan told her one afternoon as they walked along the creek that bordered the Turner property. Enough to buy a small piece of land, maybe build a cabin. What about your wandering ways? Olivia asked, though her heart leapt at his implication. Ryan smiled, taking her hand. Seems I've found something worth staying put for. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Olivia, I know this is sudden, and if you need more time, I understand. But I love you. I love Tommy too. I want to build a life with you both. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. Are you proposing, Ryan Calloway? I reckon I am. He knelt before her, still holding her hands. Olivia Gallagher, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Joy bubbled up within her, bright and unstoppable. Yes, she answered, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. Yes, I will marry you. Their kiss was interrupted by a small voice. Does this mean Mr. Ryan is going to be my pa now? Tommy asked, peering at them from behind a tree. Ryan laughed, lifting the boy into his arms. If that's all right with you, partner. Tommy's face broke into a wide grin. Can I call you pa? I'd be honored, Ryan replied, his voice thick with emotion as he gathered both Tommy and Olivia into an embrace. By the time Jackson was well enough to travel, the plans were set. They would continue to Whisper Creek, where Olivia would introduce Ryan to her cousin. They would marry there, and Ryan would use his savings to purchase land nearby where they could build their home. The Turners saw them off with supplies and well wishes, extracting promises of visits and letters. Jackson, still weak but determined, rode his own horse, insisting he wouldn't miss seeing this cowboy finally get hitched. Whisper Creek welcomed them with curiosity and kindness. Olivia's cousin Margaret was initially surprised by the sudden engagement but quickly warmed to Ryan when she saw how he doted on both Olivia and Tommy. He's a good man, she told Olivia as they prepared for the small wedding ceremony. The way he looks at you, that's rare, cousin. I know, Olivia replied, smoothing the simple white dress Margaret had helped her make. I never expected to find love again, especially not like this. The wedding took place in Whisper Creek's small church, with Jackson serving as Ryan's best man and Margaret standing up for Olivia. Tommy proudly carried the rings, his face solemn with the responsibility. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ryan's kiss held all the promise of their future together, a future built on the foundation of that desperate moment in the Cimarron River, when he'd risked everything for a woman and child he didn't know. The land Ryan purchased was just 3 miles from town, with good water and fertile soil. While their cabin was being built, they stayed with Margaret, Ryan working odd jobs around town and Olivia helping in the millinery shop. By the time winter arrived, they had a snug home of their own, modest but filled with love. Spring brought new beginnings. Jackson, who had decided to settle nearby, helped Ryan break ground for crops and build corrals for the horses and cattle they would eventually raise. Olivia planted a garden and started taking in sewing work, her skilled hands quickly earning her a reputation in the growing community. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the Wyoming sky in brilliant hues, Olivia rested her head on Ryan's shoulder, his arm secure around her waist. I have something to tell you, she said softly. Ryan turned to look at her, his eyes questioning. What is it, love? Olivia took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. We're going to have a baby. Joy dawned across his face, bright as the morning sun. A baby, you're certain, she nodded, laughing as he swept her into his arms, spinning her around on the porch. Careful. I'm in a delicate condition, she teased. Ryan set her down gently, his hands cradling her face. You've made me the happiest man alive, Olivia Calloway. And you saved us, she replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. In more ways than one. Tommy was ecstatic at the news of a sibling on the way, immediately appointing himself official protector of his mother and the baby. He followed Olivia around the cabin, carrying things for her and repeatedly asking when the baby would arrive. Not for months yet, Olivia explained patiently. Babies need time to grow strong before they're ready to meet the world. In late October, as the first snowflakes began to dust the plains, Olivia gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Margaret, after the 2 women who had shown them such kindness. She had Ryan's blue eyes and a dusting of dark hair that promised to be as curly as her father's. She's perfect, Ryan whispered, cradling the tiny infant with awe, just like her mother. She's strong, Olivia observed as the baby wrapped her tiny hand around Ryan's finger. Like her father. As their family grew, so did their homestead. Ryan's natural skill with horses led to a successful breeding operation, while Olivia's sewing business flourished. They added rooms to the cabin, built a proper barn, and planted an orchard that would bear fruit in the years to come. Tommy, now called Tom, grew into a responsible young man who shared his stepfather's love of horses and his mother's gentle heart. Sarah, called Sally by her doting father, was joined by two brothers Jackson Henry and William Ryan, completing their family circle. 10 years after Ryan had pulled Olivia and Tommy from the Cimarron River, they hosted a celebration at their prosperous ranch. Friends and neighbors gathered to commemorate the decade of growth and change in Whisper Creek. Jackson, now married himself to the widowed schoolteacher, raised a glass in toast to Ryan and Olivia, who proved that sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the most desperate moments. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep, Ryan and Olivia stood on their porch, just as they had countless nights before. The ranch spread before them, horses in the paddocks, cattle in the distant fields, the garden Olivia had nurtured to abundance. "Did you ever imagine this?" Olivia asked, leaning against her husband's solid frame. "That day when you saw a woman fainting in the river with her child," Ryan's arms tightened around her. "Never in my wildest dreams. I was just trying to keep you both alive. And now look what you've built." She turned in his embrace to face him. "A family, a home, a legacy. We built it together," he corrected, bending to kiss her softly. "And I thank God every day that I was riding by that river at that exact moment." Olivia smiled, remembering his words from that desperate day. "I've got both, keep your head high." And I meant it. Ryan's eyes, still as blue as the Wyoming sky after all these years, held hers with unwavering love. "I've got you both, all of you, and I always will." As the stars appeared overhead, they remained on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds on the wild frontier. Their love story, begun in danger and desperation, had blossomed into something beautiful and enduring, a testament to courage, kindness, and the unexpected ways in which lives can be transformed by a single act of heroism. And in the years that followed, as Whisper Creek grew from settlement to town, as their children grew and brought grandchildren into the world, Ryan and Olivia Calloway remained each other's strength and solace. Their story became legend in the community, the drowning widow saved by a passing cowboy who became the founding family of one of the region's most respected ranches. But to them, it was simply their life, a precious gift they never took for granted, built on that fateful day when the rushing waters of the Cimarron River had threatened to take everything, but instead had given them everything that mattered.